Writers Workshop, we always emphasize, put the weather in your story.
And if there's anything that this film has, it's weather in the story. And I think that's kind of what I appreciate about it. Is that the body heat is more than just about the steamy, scintillating stuff.
Right, yes. Today we're going to talk about what Roger Ebert said in 1981 was one of his top 10 best films. It's a kind of a loose remake of noirs that started 40 years ago when this movie was made. So Noir started in 1981. This is kind of an homage to him.
Yep, one of the best first-time directing jobs probably in history.
I would agree, yeah.
So we're going to be talking about Body Heat. Join us on Kyle and Nick on Film. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from Goethe Film Reviews.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks again for watching. Thanks for finding us, and for the loyal fans, thanks for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram. You can reach us that way. Also, you got some great options down in the Patreon to tell us what to do. And today we're going to talk about Lawrence Kasdan's written and directed Body Heat, his film Body Heat.
So, as with the title, a heat wave has settled on the Florida coast, and the seedy lawyer Ned Racine can feel its effect. With the heat enters Maddie Walker, an attractive married woman he's taken an eye to. The two begin an intensive, hot and heavy affair behind the back of her husband Edmund. But when things get too intense, Ned and Maddie search for a way to get Edmund out of the picture once and for all. I actually have this triple pack, and it's funny because I bought this movie pack for LA Confidential and The Player. There were two films I studied in college. That was actually one of my film classes, and it came with Body Heat, and I've been sitting on Body Heat for years. So thank you, Nick, for picking this one, because now we get to talk about it.
This movie has one of the best quote lines of movie history of all time, and I'm guaranteeing it. And that's Maddie saying, "You're not too bright, are you?" And I could like that in a man. That's one of the best lines ever in a movie.
How I snagged my wife. But it's true, though. Lawrence Kasdan, coming off of Empire and coming off of Raiders,
also does this
movie. And it's so crazy to me because just you almost become synonymous with the genre you're most famous for. And so when I think of Lawrence Kasdan, I think of Empire, I think of Raiders, I think of The Force Awakens, I think of Solo, I think of all these things. I even think of, before I think of Body Heat, I even think of Dreamcatcher, because it was probably one of the first Stephen King books I read, and it was like horror sci-fi, just like Star Wars. So I think of those realms before I think of things like The Big Chill and Body Heat.
And at the time when this came out, this was big news because a lot of the content of the steamy scenes of William Hurt and Kathleen Turner, and a lot of adults went to this movie specifically and enticement, and it was well played in radios and the steaminess and this really salacious material. It still works today. You're like, oh my god, right? Yeah.
It's the thing about it that it's funny is that when I've read a couple reviews from close friends of mine who'd watched the film recently for the first time as well, and most of them kind of the same agreement I have, which is when you hear a film like Body Heat and people talk about it like, oh, that movie, oh my gosh, you expect something a lot more salacious and inappropriate than we ended up getting. And that's fine. It's interesting because it's in the 80s. This was
but a lot of it is what you think.
Yes.
You see. A lot of it is not really the showing, but what you think you're seeing.
And I think it's the environment too, because like you said, having the weather in your story. Movies about heat waves get me. Things like In the Heights, things like Do the Right Thing, and things like Body Heat. Like having the heat in your film is one of the few like temporal things that can happen where I'm just completely understanding. I'm like, oh, that's gross and sticky. Like,
but it begins right away because it begins with a warehouse fire, an arson fire in the background.
Yeah,
and then he's with another woman, but he's really focused on the heat of the burning, and he doesn't really care what she has to say. But there's also sirens going on, like a warning to Ned, like, hey, you better keep your head out.
It kind of like he can't stop looking towards the danger. It's probably this is probably at its simplest though. There's probably many more layers than I'm looking to it, but like that's how I always felt like as I was watching the movie. I was like, Ned, stop looking towards the dangerous path. You have so many other options. Like he kept putting himself deeper and deeper. I think if you were to remake Body Heat, I would put the filmmakers behind Uncut Gems, the Safdie brothers, to make this movie because it's a movie about a guy digging himself deeper and deeper into a problem.
Right, because just mostly in noirs, the person that you follow is not really the protagonist or antagonist. The person that you follow is constantly making decisions that you like. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And that is a perfect epitome of don't do that because he's almost like a moth to the. I gotta do it. I gotta do it. Right.
And I'm not saying I blame him for most of the decisions he makes early on.
No, even his friends are like,
even though he's a
hey,
slimy monster, it's kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So this screenplay is loosely based on the popular noir Double Indemnity.
Okay. Yeah.
I think if you look, Wild Things is loosely based on this movie because Wild Things takes place in Miami, and it's very much plays on the noirs. I don't think Wild Things is much like a noir, but it's very loosely based on this one as well.
Yeah. There's a trilogy for you.
There's
one night, on your Friday night. You want to get steamy, you watch those 3 movies back to back.
Okay, cinematography is Richard H. Klein. He's well accomplished. He's got a lot of credits to his name. He also did the musical, and he got a lot of awards for the Camelot in 1968. From there, he could probably pick his own projects.
Yep.
And I think he gets this movie. I mean, everybody gets this movie. Lawrence Kantor wrote it, and I think John Barry with the music get what was going. And I think Richard H. Klein gets what's going on with this movie. Make it as steamy, as hot, almost like even in an air-conditioned room, you're like, wow.
Yeah, because I was watching this in my basement. I mean, I was watching this on the screen in my basement, which is usually a very cool room, and I felt the heat, if you will. I think you're right, though. I think it's a well-oiled machine of a movie, which, again, just goes to tell you that Lawrence Kasdan had a singular vision, and he was able to work with his collaborators to make something that was a cinematic gem of a movie. Because this does not feel like a first-time director, and I'm sure that Kasdan probably made some buddies. He probably had his friends where he was able to hang out on set and learn some stuff.
Well, that's
one of the beautiful things about it is when you're in the, I've had many times where I've written a screenplay for something and I just hang out on set to the point where I'm telling people like do what you have to do with adapting my screenplay. I'm just here to learn. Like, I'm here to watch. And I think that's what Kasdan probably did.
Yeah. So we talked about early beginning of the movie, you get an explosion, sirens. The first line of the movie is, "My God, it's hot." Of course.
Yep.
And definitely, like the caffeine scenes, the office scenes, very overexposed. I think Kubrick did it in Shining, where you put the back window light and you just blare light in, really like that overexposed backlighting.
Yep. That influence of the sun, even on a closed room.
So you can't escape the heat or anywhere you go. It's everywhere you go. I do like the art direction, the set, because his office is a very noir office. It's even though it's in color, it's that Venetian blinds, that very boxy with the shelves and everything, and it's got where you can hang your hat and all that.
It's got a very like how you would imagine a lawyer, like if you were just in your head like trying to think of like a lawyer's office, that's how it would come out. Yes. And I don't mean that in the wrong way. I just mean it feels very classically lawyerish, or a guy trying to look like he's a lawyer.
I think I think Ned's more interested in looking like a lawyer than anything else. But I want to. This is a multiple viewing for me, but really when I'm focusing on, there's a great play of the color red with this. I mean, Ned's car is red. I mean, even when Maddie's dating or going out with him, she's wearing a red skirt. My God, the bomb is red. The red wire. So there's a lot of play with red of like, danger, man. Yeah. Every step of the way you could turn back and not be part of this. The introduction of Ned and Maddie when they first time meet, that's one of the best things because she played it so well. She just walks casually, but she's dressed perfectly to make sure he follows.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating about the movie is it does a good job early on of making you think that you don't know where it's going. I think that by the end of the film, and I would criticize one thing about it is I feel like I didn't like the ending as much. I felt like it was a little bit exactly where I thought we'd end up.
Yeah, just like the ending of Wild Things.
Yeah, there's one of those elements where it's like, I knew we were going to be here at the end. But early on in the film, it tricks you into thinking maybe you're wrong. And that's, I think, one of the best parts about it, is that you go into the film with preconceived notions, and so many times early on, they're like, this isn't going to go that way.
No.
And then it does. But
every ounce of dialogue, even though it's a lot of exposition heavy, every ounce of dialogue is forcing Ned to turn away. She tells him, you're a big dumb idiot. And she goes, how do you know? Well, you don't look lazy. And it's almost like she's recruiting him, even talking about it. He goes, I want an ice cream. Well, what do you want? I want a cherry. Red. Every moment you should stop and just walk away from her, and he doesn't. And she plays him. She really plays him well. This character, Maddie, plays this. Oh, kiss you, I can't, and shuts the door on him and looks out.
And then you get, even though I think William Hurt's an attractive fella, but you get one of the creepiest things in the world when he's just in the window looking at her.
Or he throws that chair through the window. Like, they never talk about that. Did they fix the window? They never talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta imagine Edmund comes home one day. He's like, honey, what happened to the door? You also, I want to call out Richard Krenna, who the problem is we look at Richard Krenna as a bad guy, even though he's just the married husband. He seems, generally speaking, a victim in this whole like double cross. Yeah. And not only that, but we have to assume that Richard Krenna is leaving on the weekend so that he can go recruit John Rambo and do his missions before he comes back. So he's an American hero. And we're looking at him like a villain, but anyway. But
his glasses in this story is almost like the latchkey for Dial M for Murder. Mm-hmm. It is something that you really want to focus on. It's a pivotal plot point. I don't know. It's like Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
Also, sirens, warnings. She has chimes. She collects chimes. It's another telling for Ned to like, hey, come on, get out.
Yeah.
Yes, and especially I like the dinner dialogue. If I find out anybody, I'll rip them with their bare hands. So every step of the way, this is telling Ned not to go. And then, of course, even with Ted Danson being his friend, he's telling, hey, man, knock it off.
And when Ted Danson tells you something, you should listen.
Especially about women, right? Yeah.
Ted Danson, he knows a thing or two. I did not realize he was in this movie. So it was funny to me when he pops up and it's just appeared. And it's funny also, I heard of...
Because nowadays, after Cheers, we would suspect he would be the Ned Racine character.
I think, had he hit big with Cheers by that point, he probably would have been the main character. But what's funny is I'd read somewhere that his mother had walked out of the movie when she realized what it was, like what kind of movie it was. And she lied to him for decades and said she'd seen it. She never ended up watching the rest of the movie, but she told him that later on in life, that she just couldn't sit through the lascivious sensuality of it all.
Usually when I direct films, and Kyle's also kind of the same camp, we want to emphasize people's talents, even though it's not really part of the story. And I like Lawrence Kasdan knows that Ted Danson actually is a pretty good dancer. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, he incorporated on the loading dock of waiting for William Hurt to arrive, he does this graceful dancing. That's not really part of the story. It's not really moves the story along, but it's kind of nice to see somebody's talents being projected.
Well, let's compare here because we recently talked about Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Yeah.
And that film has a lot of elements of characters with talents or characters with singular like comparisons you could make. There's the gangster that's reading the dictionary and misusing the words.
Yeah.
Ted Danson's character is a fully formed character first. The talent just comes in as an added flourish.
Yeah.
It's not a character defining skill. That's where the key difference is that if his character was just Ned's friend who happened to be dancing a lot, that doesn't work. But it's Ned's warning symbol that's like, hey, we're both competitors here, but I'm also your friend and I'm telling you this is a bad idea.
This is bad.
Like, and I think that's where that cultivation different happens from him, is that Ted Danson's character is, again, like, I'm trying to pull you back out. Both of his friends do.
I like the great scene of William Hurt and Richard McKenna having that little struggle down below and at the house. Mm-hmm. They're fighting, but up above, shot really well, is Maddie. Mm-hmm. And she's looking down at it. It's very metaphorical, but it also emphasizes what kind of the plot is. She's always looking down at these two guys mm-hmm. as they fight for her devotion. And she's like, oh, stop, mm-hmm. don't. Whoever rescues, she's winning no matter what happens, right?
Yeah, you can tell that she's mulling over the idea of what happens if this happens, what happens if that happens. It's an interesting moment because the fight itself is fairly anticlimactic. But it's
shot quick.
It's shot very quick, and it's more to showcase the characters than it is to progress the plot. Even though it does progress the plot significantly. It's important to point out too, the debut feature film for Kathleen Turner
and Mickey Rourke.
And Mickey Rourke. And I this might be one of the reasons that for years I confused 9.5 Weeks with Body Heat.
Very easy to do
because they both have very similar scintillation, if you will, and they both have a Mickey Rourke.
9.5 Weeks definitely pushed the envelope of what Body Heat did.
Yeah.
And Mickey Rourke, he does. For what he has
mm-hmm.
on offer, does really well and shows off his talents. And like I said, when he was in Rumblefish, Sean Penn and Tom Cruise would sneak on set to watch Mickey Rourke act and learn from him. Mm-hmm. So, for all the things that would happen with Mickey Rourke's career, he did have incredible talent, and he shows it off in one of his first movies.
It kind of comes down to, I would think Rourke is one of those guys like Bruce Willis, where when he is invested and really cares, he can do it. Like The Wrestler, like Sin City. Mickey Rourke
in that really small little slivet in Pledge.
Yeah.
Pledge, where he was phenomenal.
Yeah,
he really stole it from Jack Nicholson.
But with Kathleen Turner, just you can't really. This movie does not work without her. It doesn't, because you have to have a femme fatale. You have to have someone who is capable of being forceful, strong, but also weak and gentle.
And she's beautiful. She's not like outrageously like supermodel beautiful.
She does have the wife next door look. If not really the girl next door, but the wife next door, where it's like the I would covet.
Yeah, but I just love this dialogue. Like, you should be not going out wearing that. What is this, a dress? No, that body.
Yeah,
I love this dialogue. And then she's like, no, my temperature's always of 100. It's the way I am.
Yeah. Yeah, every single time they mention heat or cool or anything that had to do with temperature based, I was like, oh, yes. But I think part of that comes down to, Kathleen Turner. I feel bad for this. I'm aware of her from *Romancing the Stone*. I'm mostly aware from her one season stint on *Californication*, where she played like an over-sexed up boss who was always sexually aggressive towards her male coworkers. And I think like it's interesting to know that in this case it's kind of that difference. It's the complete opposite. In this film, she is aggressive, but she's aggressive in allowing other people to get into her trap.
Right. It's aggressive, but she's trying to entice you to put the rope around your own neck.
Yeah.
She's not going to do it herself, but she's going to make you do it.
Yeah.
This is also a little bit peppered with comedy. There's a little bit fun. There's a little stuff where you're like, that's pretty funny. Especially when they're all smoking in the office and Ted Dances like, I'll just breathe the air.
Yeah. I think
when they're all...
I think that's kind of the other purpose of these two guys is not only to remind Ned of what he's getting into, because we have enough reminders of what he's getting into.
Oh, yeah, over the head with it,
But I think his other coworkers are kind of like in between horror scenes when, you have a cat jump out and it's nothing in a horror movie. Like, that's who they are. Is they're meant to kind of be very anti-sexual. Ted Danson is not a sexual being in this movie. He's kind of the anti. He's got the big thick glasses and he's dancing, but he's not like dancing in a sensual way. He dances in a very flourishing way. Like, it's again like he's a very anti-sensual character.
He's always what I talk about when I do writer workshop. There's the conscientious character. It's almost a character that knows he's in a story, and I think Ted Danson's character is almost like the conscientious.
If there is one, it's
if there is one, it's almost like Jim Gordon in the Batman series is almost like a conscientious character. He kind of knows that he's in this story. And I think it's almost like he's a self-aware character.
Yeah, I would say so.
Almost like, hey, I'm going to try to tell you, but you're your own man, and you're going to condemn yourself. And that's what noirs are. You are doomed. That's the whole part of noir. You are doomed no matter what you do.
Yep.
I would like this. There's another little snippet because I talked about it. It should not work, but it works. Ted Danson dancing in this movie. It should not work, but it works. It's but this emphasis of Ned Racine watching this clown drive by in a clown car. Mm-hmm. And the music is like, boo, boo, boo. Yeah. Now, that should not work. That is a little more ridiculous, but that's another warning of, hey, you're being you're the jackass.
It does work, but I again can't explain why. And I also don't think it's a scene that I think if you excised it from the film wouldn't change the movie at all.
No.
It doesn't feel like it's something I would need to cut.
No,
it doesn't seem like it's time wasting.
But you tell anybody about this, and hey, there's a story in this movie. There's like a clown driving a clown car driving by. You're like, what the hell? But it's almost like it doesn't really need to be there, but in there it makes perfect sense because he watches the clown car and go, am I being the clown here? Am I in the movie? Right. Just for a little bit, he just gets like, maybe I should stop doing this and just not rent this car.
Yeah. Body Heat. I would argue that it's a very hit you over the head kind of a movie because so many of the elements that are at play here are very forcefully like letting you know what the movie's about. Yeah. But I don't think any of them ruin the experience or take away from it at all.
That's the emphasis of noirs is you actually know what's going to happen. We watched Maltese Falcon with Double Indemnity. We know that these characters are condemned. They're doomed. What's going to be the end result. But we can enjoy the ride as they go along and condemn themselves.
When Kasdan once wrote actually about his favorite noir films, he actually had a piece that was taken away and put into IMDb where he mentioned Double Indemnity.
Oh yeah,
obviously, of course.
Because even if she's at the stairwell in her house.
And he also said The Asphalt Jungle and Out of the Past were his 3 favorite noir films, and those were the ones that had the biggest influence on Body Heat.
Yeah. And I think in noir, if you want to look at a noir that has great dialogue. Out of the Past is one of the top 10 noir of dialogue because we thought dialogue is great in this movie.
Oh yeah, I mean every piece. I don't think there's many places I would chop dialogue if I had to make the film shorter.
No. But that one time she's like, "Would you just get in your car?" And he's like, "No, I won't do it." And she slaps him, and then she goes sits away, so he will leave, and then she can leave. And they don't
it's
really
clever.
It's clever, but it's like whoa.
And again, it's one of those areas that when I was watching the movie, she was like, "We can't leave together," and I was like, "Well, then you should slap him and walk away." And like when she does, I'm like, "Yeah, do it." Yeah, like again, it was exactly what I expected to happen.
Yeah.
But it almost affirmed that the characters were clever enough to get away with something.
Yes.
And it made me feel clever because I was like, yes, I would have done that too. Yes.
But also because Lawrence Kasdan's talking about this really love noirs, and I love noirs, and it's really that a point that you have this low angle shot of them making out. But up on corner, right, like where my finger is, you have the slow turning ceiling fan. That doesn't really work at all.
Not giving off any cool air.
Not giving up any cool. It's a nice noir trope because we all watch these noirs and there's always the slow working ceiling fan.
Yep.
That doesn't really. It's not effective. It's just grinding its gears.
Or you might say that like it's doing its best to combat the heat and can't.
It can't.
Like it can't. The unmovable object, if you will.
Yeah. But it actually goes fast when they're making out. In bed. Then it goes.
Nothing to say about that. I
gotta watch it again.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. What's interesting too is we should also point out, because this film has a very, I mean, we for most of the film we view Kathleen Turner as an object. Let's be obvious with it here, because she's the object of affection. She's the object of scintillation. But it's interesting to note then that because Lawrence Kasdan didn't want it to be a heavy male gaze movie, he did hire a female editor, Carol Littleton, who edited a great many of his films afterwards. But he wanted to have a female editor because he wanted someone to take his male shot movie and give a female touch at the end. Which I think actually, if you're gonna do a movie like this that could run into danger of showcasing a bad light on the female form, I think that's really smart, is hire a female editor. I think it's a great idea.
Because we talk about in Things to Do and Never Dead that you have female characters are just vessels and receptacles. And here, she's using her objectivity, right?
Yeah.
This is her goal. She has a plan, and she's using her body to navigate the characters. Mm-hmm. She's the middle of the spider web. She's manipulating everybody, and that's all part of noirs, is the femme fatale manipulating everybody to do what she wants.
But I was telling you, I think that William Hurt almost has more nude sex like sequences in the film.
Right. They really cut that.
They really showcase William Hurt's backside.
They really cut it about as low as you can get it. Yeah.
And there's that scene where they're in bed when she starts reaching under the covers. I think a male editor might not have focused as heavily on those scenes. But having a female editor come in and kind of even the odds a little bit, where it feels like we're kind of objectifying both of them through our eyes. I think that works pretty well.
I think you need a female editor, especially for this movie.
Yep. So I think that's a good idea for future filmmakers, is look at how can you diversify the people that are on your set with different viewpoints. And we're seeing that more and more.
Because you could have got lazy and you showed, here comes Kathleen Turner, and you're like, we start with the feet and we go all the way up, and then we do that stupid shot. Where in the beginning of this movie, she's far away.
Yeah.
And we already know her attractiveness from a great distance.
Yeah. Yeah, you could do the thing that they made fun of in Leslie Nielsen films, where they had the shot from the feet up and she's got like 4 kneecaps because they keep going. You could do that, but like you also could showcase something that kind of sees them both in a vulnerable position, because that's what the nudity does on film, is it showcases the vulnerability.
But I just want to emphasize that they could have gone lazy, and Lawrence Kasdan did it right by showing that even from a great distance she can stick out.
Yep. And I think that's why I'm so thankful that the film got finished, because again, first time director, you tend to pull the leash in a little bit more, even if he's got these great writing credits. But it is important to note that it's good to make friends with people in high places, because George Lucas actually had stepped in and talked to Alan Ladd, about, if he goes over budget, I will cover the overages. Which I think is, we can criticize George Lucas all we want about his directing choices with those prequels and all the things that he did after he created these ideas, but he's a good person who cares about these people that he works with. He offered to pay the overages on the budget if Lawrence Kasdan went over. Yeah, and I think that's great. And he didn't tell Kasdan. He wasn't looking for like a fair favor. He was just, I want to make sure that his vision is secured. And I think that's such a cool idea,
Yeah, there's not really a lot of clever play with camera, but is camera effective? Mm-hmm. There's not really flashy, angles or, Dutch angles or anything, but it's really effective of really encompassing the characters. I mean, even in William Hurt's apartment, even though you don't have a lot of choices to do, but they make sure that everybody's in the shot and make sure that it's compact.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, everybody's kind of condensed like we are in this movie, and it's a very tough environment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, have you seen Body Heat?
Yeah, let us know down in the comments section below. Is it your favorite Lawrence Kasdan directed film? Is it your favorite Lawrence Kasdan written film?
I love this movie.
We'd love to hear more about it down in the comments section below. What other Lawrence Kasdan films would you like us to cover? I've been wanting to watch The Big Chill for a while.
If your wife gives you a fedora hat for a present, you better look out.
But let us know in the comment section down below your thoughts on the film. And while you're down there, don't forget you can like, subscribe, and share. It helps out the channel so much with such a little bit of clicking on your part. And while you're down there, too, you can also check out the Patreon, as Nick pointed out below. Tiers as low as $1. You can join up with our patrons and help decide the films that we're going to be talking about on future episodes.
That's right.
But until next time, I'm Kyle Goethe, and you can find all my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and watch out for old ladies that have a lot of wind chimes.
Yep.